This build took over 20 hours to build, start to finish, and I'm going to show you just how I did it. But first, B-roll. If you think this is cool, check out these other monsters I've made. In total, I've made 3, including this one, and all of them are just as amazing. In total, they've probably taken roughly 60 hours to complete, and by all means was it worth it. Here's a quick sneak peek at all of my other ridiculous monsters. Let me tell you, anyone can make this stuff, and I know it looks daunting, but let me tell you, I'm about to show you how I go about making this. So stick along for the entire video, and I promise you, you will not regret it. Regardless, let's finally get into it. The best creations are ones that are planned out, so of course I decided that the best thing to do was to draw this entire scene out by hand. What drawing does is it helps me plan everything out so that I know what to build, where, and how. It's a simple step to elevating all of your builds, and I seriously recommend it if you guys are getting into building. So when I start off making any monster, I immediately make a skeleton. Now a skeleton can look anything like what I'm showing you right now, which is just, it could just be a bunch of diamond blocks placed around in the shape of a stick figure. This allows me to go around in World Edit and place giant spheres of whatever texture I want and have it look as organic as possible. Then I fine-tune everything with a smaller brush to make sure it looks perfect. As you can see, all of these different body parts are made up of different spheres, including the head. Now for the design of the head, I immediately thought that the best thing to do was to look up references online to find the coolest design to use for this monster. I ultimately decided that I wanted something with horns, and this is what I got. This was the best version that I made, and I love it to this day. Next, you can't have a huge monster if there isn't just a little bit of destruction. So the next thing I focused on was the village. Now the best idea for a village is of course to make the buildings first and then copy them around as you'd like. So I created a few prefabs that I pasted around the place, and then afterwards I went around with an airbrush and made sure that there was holes and magma absolutely everywhere, resembling a burning village. And of course I can't forget to add trees absolutely everywhere, because if your scene does not have any life to it, then it's not as interesting, so make sure to add as much green as you can fit in. It really helps. Next, I decided to work on the castle, so I immediately worked on creating a huge pit in the ground where I'd imagine the castle would be ripped out of. Next, I made the outline of the islands that this castle was going to sit on top of, and let me tell you, it's a pain making floating islands, but if you do it correctly, it can really pay off. Now what I like to do is I love pasting slabs, walls, and all sorts of different blocks around to make it look like there's motion in the build, like it really is being ripped out of the ground and there's debris flying everywhere. Next, I of course worked on the castle. Now the castle was something that was vital to the final product, and I had to make sure that it looked as good as I possibly could make it. So first, I started with an outline. All the outlines I use for my builds are always made out of a bright material like red wool. It helps me imagine what the build is going to look like and where everything will sit. Then of course, I build up the walls and I make sure to make them the right height, so from any perspective, it looks like a gradient, almost like a slope going up to the highest point of the castle. Then I chose my color palette and I used it everywhere that I felt that it was necessary. The roof, I used greens, and for the actual walls, I used different stones. Last but not least, it can't be a destructive scene with lots of fire without a dragon, of course. So I added this dragon that I used in one of my other builds to add a little bit more life and story. Now the last thing I can probably point out is if you look closely, it looks as though the hand is reaching into the castle and grabbing it, gripping it with its entire hands and pulling it backwards. Now my ideology behind this entire thing is to make the coolest and most intimidating monster I've made so far. Now, if you want to see how I made all of my other monsters, please tell me down in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks guys, and please stay tuned if you want to see more of my content.